This live edition of the Ridley Report is brought to you by Grafton Welcome Wagon. They don't have a website, but they also don't have zoning. Grafton Welcome Wagon. Well, as you may have seen just from a brief shot here, I'm in Keene, New Hampshire, at a place they're calling the Ministry of Propaganda. And that is where liberty activists are getting together to paint signs by the dozen. And they've taken these signs to City Hall. You've seen them there probably in some of my previous videos. I'm here this week because I have an arraignment for civil disobedience for attempting to bring a camera into a courtroom after the judge banned cameras. But we definitely have an improving infrastructure here, and the man behind it is right over here. You know him as Sam on the forums. I call him Richard, and that's the name he was given when he was born, I believe. Richard, could you come over a little bit closer to the light and tell me a little bit about this sort of sign factory approach that you've got going? Can you go ahead and, would you mind standing up and coming a little closer to the light so I can see you a little better? Let's see. They're getting ready for Hemp Fest, and watch that one over there. It's about to fall. Getting ready for
and the city council.
They're getting ready for Hemp Fest and a city council meeting that's coming up in Keene. And Richard, why have you chosen signs to be your focus for liberty activism?
Well, it's one of many. As long as it's words, that's my business. I work in words, I write songs, I make signs. This was kind of a warm-up for an idea that I had on my way out here, looking at the highway. I was somehow reminded of the old Burma Shave signs, which I used to keep a little notebook of back around, that was 1960, it was. Same trip where I first saw white-only signs and couldn't figure out what that meant because white people only didn't make any sense.
So you remember
that real well.
So you were involved in the civil rights movement in the South?
Well, no, I was 7 years old.
Oh, I see.
But
okay.
I remember it was long enough ago that they still had those signs up, and they also had Burma Shave signs, and I kept a little notebook of those, and it occurred to me, wouldn't it be fun to have libertarian Burma Shave signs? And I began saving some slogans that I'd come up with.
Well, now, Richard, if I might ask you, did you witness any of the 1960s activism?
A little bit. I did take part in it. I recall holding the candle, singing "We Shall Overcome," sort of 1969.
How would you compare what's going on now to this? Do you see any similarities, differences?
Wow. In the drug war, there is definitely a focus on injustice, but I don't think it's quite as cohesive as it was in the 60s. That's a tough one. I'd like to have some time to think about it, but what I observe now, it was such a clear injustice, and so many people had adopted the belief that discrimination was wrong, that it was an idea whose time had clearly come, and it felt good in its way. I also disliked the way that the government took over the 1960s.
Another question I have for you, Richard. How many signs have you made so far here, do you think? At the Ministry of Propaganda?
Quite a few. You can see all these.
These are some of them veterans of the last City Council meeting?
The last City Council meeting, we had these at the State House protest for...
there's some down there, too.
More down there. HR 6.
So you're thinking, would you say 2 dozen, 1 dozen, 3 dozen?
Probably 3 or 4 dozen by now. I got 100 polls, so if you go downstairs and count what's left and subtract, that's how many signs I've made.
All right. Well, Richard from the Ministry of Propaganda, also known as Richard from freekeene.com, I guess. I appreciate your time and look forward to seeing your signs in action.
Me too.
By the way, like I said, this edition of the Ridley Report brought to you by the Grafton Welcome Wagon. Grafton Welcome Wagon.